welcome to Politics in the Pub. First of all, let me acknowledge the Gadigal people of the great Eora Nation on whose land this important public forum occurs. I'm kind of excited about tonight because I won't have to mention the name Sam Dastyari again because it's boring me monumentally stupid. How we could make an issue out of this incessantly. The mainstream media have been having, monumental breakdowns almost if they can't speak about that. When what we are going to address tonight is a major human rights political story and issue, and the question of and it's appropriate that I made a reference to the Indigenous people of Australia because we're talking about the Indigenous people of West Papua, essentially, the lives and times and prospects of. And to have Joe Collins and Sister Susan Connelly here as human rights activists over a whole spectrum of issues, but in particular with regard to West Papua, is a great pleasure for me. And I came here, even if the place is not packed to the rafters, having a sense of excitement, and not just because we won't mention Dastyari again. Please welcome Sister Susan Connelly to the microphone.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Stuart. Thank you. Great to see you again. Lovely to be with Joe. I'll have to say it, Saint Joe in my book. I've got that one back again. Right, well now, I'm a sister of St Joseph, one of the congregation that Mary MacKillop founded, and for the last 20 years I've been connected with East Timor. I've been to Timor many times and worked with the people, and today I just went to the funeral of a wonderful Timorese woman whom we knew and loved for many years. She was 85 and she died. What went on in East Timor, of course, is really the reason why I'm so concerned and disturbed about Papua, because they are so connected. I'm doing a PhD at the moment. You're never too old to start. That's what I say. You're never too old. And I'm doing it on the relationship between Australia and East Timor, and I'm using the philosophy of René Girard to answer for myself, first of all, why Australia did what it did and why it's doing what it's doing to Timor. So that's what I'm up to at the moment. But I had the happiness of going to West Papua in February for 2 weeks. So that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. Some of the things from my trip there. And look, to be perfectly honest, I couldn't get out of there quick enough. It was just like my first trip to Timor 20 years ago. My first trip was 1996 to Timor. And the same feeling of suspicion and just not knowing who to trust, the same feeling of oppression and just exactly what you're allowed to do, and the same feeling of a people oppressed and yet looking with hope to the future. I met so many wonderful Papuan people, and it has affected me very much. I went up there with Peter Arndt, who is the director of the Archdiocese of Brisbane's Justice and Peace Department. So Peter and I went there, and our aim was to build relationships with the Justice and Peace Commissions in the 5 Catholic dioceses of West Papua. Now, we met many Protestant pastors and some Muslim people as well who are deeply, deeply concerned about what's going on. But of course our job in the 2 weeks was to connect with the Catholic groups, and so that's what we did. And the other aim, of course, is for us to come back and to talk at places like this, to help the people know, because the unmentionable man who was spoken of before, they dominate the paper, always. It's always this type of thing, this evasion of what is really true and important that takes over. Whoever has heard of the thousands of Papuans who've been arrested in the last couple of weeks? It just never makes it. A man took my hands in his and he said, in tears, he said, we are in danger. And I felt, and then he burst into tears, and I'm there with this little man in my arms. It was most affecting. And I'm going to say what I was going to say at the end, because when you get to the end, you always miss it out. It was a Catholic turnout, okay? I'm proudly a religious person, and I believe in prayer, I believe in God. I believe prayer changes people. Prayer doesn't change God. God is changeless. God just loves everybody, whatever. But prayer changes us, and we were asked over and over again to pray for the people. So what I got produced, and which was delivered to me yesterday, just in time for Politics in the Pub, is a little prayer card. And it's just got a little potted history of Papua on the back. It's got a couple of photographs that I took, and it's got a prayer. And the prayer's really about us, that we open our minds and hearts and ears and start doing something for these people. So we're not saying to God, oh God, look after the Papuan people. To me, that's not prayer, that's pie in the sky. The prayer is, God, give me the wisdom and the courage to do what I've got to do. I went to see a woman called Rosa Tambade. I was so affected by this woman. She was one of the ones who was involved in the Act of Free Choice in 1969. And I'm going to tell you her story because I heard it from her own lips. She was a young married woman, and she had a rather responsible position in government somehow. I don't know what the position was. She was taken from her home by the military, and she was put into a house with another woman for 2 weeks. She wasn't allowed to see her 4 children. She wasn't allowed to communicate at all with her family. Her husband brought the children one day. She could see them coming up the road, but the military wouldn't allow her to see them, and she was terribly distressed by this. She was taken out. It was in July, and it was in Merauke, in the southern part of Papua. And she was taken to a hall where she was given a megaphone and a piece of paper upon which was written a declaration that Papua was now totally under the control of Indonesia. I mean, they had been there for the 7 years beforehand, but it was all a big softening up process. In her heart, she objected to this totally, but with the military standing around, and people who were other Papuans who were in favour of it, who were in the hall, she read the statement out through the megaphone. And the people in the hall all clapped in agreement. Well, you would, wouldn't you, with the gun at your head? But there were hundreds of people outside the hall who all shouted, no, no, we don't want this at all, we don't want this at all. But that was the process by which the Act of Free Choice was conducted all over the country. And she said she knew of people who objected and who were just killed, or who ran to the jungles and were killed. I just felt so sorry for this woman when she said, I feel as though I have betrayed my country. Now, this is 2016. This woman saying there, having borne the burden of that all this time. And really, she was taking her life in her hands, talking to us. Terrible. Now, as we went round to our meetings, which were held, which had already been organised by Peter, the man I went with, and the various people in the Justice and Peace Commissions, there were meetings. We had lots of meetings. The meetings went on for hours. Two of them were 4 hours long without a break. It was huge. They wanted to tell their story. They wanted to talk to us. The people talked to us. Peter conducted the meetings, of course, very skillfully, and it was a way of allowing these people to say what was really close to their hearts. And they complained that there was so little representation of them nationally and locally. It was awful. Now, the next general election is 2019, and they said their chances of being involved in that election are practically nil. So their political rights have been pretty well eroded, totally eroded. The control that is exercised. Now, for instance, on donors. Now, you could, like we could throw around the hat this evening if we wanted to, if we knew a group to send money. You can't just send money, organisation to organisation. It's very difficult to get money through. It all goes through centrally through Jakarta. They complained that they used to be able to get money from donors, but not anymore. Same with communications. It's all controlled from Jayapura. Little magazines and little newspapers have gone out of business because they've just been crushed. So you get the same type of stuff as you get in, you know that in the Fairfax media, they've got this thing, China Matters, and it's all wonderful about how wonderful China is. I suppose if we did Australia Matters, we'd do the same thing too, tell all lies. Well, it's the same thing with the Indonesians. It's all wonderful about how wonderful it is to live in Papua, if you're not a Papuan, I know. The special autonomy, well, the special autonomy was supposed to bring all this money into Papua, but they say, seeing it's supposed to have brought 58 trillion rupiah into Papua, where is the benefit to the Papuans? They said, what has been the result of all that disbursement of money? How many Papuans own supermarkets? How many Papuans can own a shop? How many Papuans can afford to buy a kiosk? That was one of the things that really got me, the way they are squeezed out of the economy. Because if you want to get a kiosk or a shop, you've got to get a loan from a bank. They said, black face, curly hair, not going to get a loan. So if you don't get a loan, you want to sell your goods, you can't afford a shop. The shops are full of other people who can afford to get a shop. So where do the Papuans end up selling? On the streets and in the car parks. I met women who would come down from the mountains every week. Now, this is their routine. They'd grow their produce, beautiful vegetables, grow their produce at home. They'd hire a sort of a little bus, a couple of women banding together, bring all the produce and the children down to the city, stay for, say, 3 days on the street, sleeping in the bus, selling the produce on the footpath, then packing it all up again, going back home to plant and reap some more. Where do the children go to school? Don't ask me. That's another problem, education. School fees? These types of people can't afford the school fees. So you get this continual spiral of lack of opportunity, lack of education, lack of being able to break into the economy. It's appalling. Do you know, I met this wonderful man named Robert Jitmau. We went to what's called the Mama markets. I tell you, some of these Papuan women, they really are formidable. They banded together and they're really haranguing the government to get them somewhere, this is in Jayapura, get them somewhere where they can sell their produce properly. Now, Robert, a Papuan man in his 40s, he was there at the meeting and we're listening to all this. And one of the things I had written down on my recommendations was to get some English material that he wanted to use with young ones who would come with the mamas, the young teenagers after school, etc., if they went to school, where he would teach them English. So I got onto a woman in Bathurst and we had it cooked up that she'd send down this stuff and we'd get to... Until I found Robert was killed in a hit-and-run accident. Nobody's been brought. It's amazing the number of Papuans are killed in hit-and-run accidents, It's amazing the number of Papuans who die for unexplained accidents. Oh, I tell you, it's shocking. And one of the things that is so sad is 40 years ago, Indigenous Papuans were 98% of the population. Now they are 49%. So that, as a result of the huge number of deaths by unexplained or, extrajudicial killings, really. The number is put as high as 500,000. But also it's from the policy of transmigration that happened. Joe sends stuff out, so the Indonesians are saying the policy doesn't apply anymore. Well, I don't know how true that is, but the place is really overrun with people from elsewhere. I could not get over the number of TNI, that's the Indonesian military, Kopassus, the Red Berets, mob running around in their little mobile things, their, what do you call them, motorbikes, military police, everywhere. The best buildings are the churches, the mosques and the military, really, everybody else. What really got me was this Detachment 88, you ought to look it up. It was formed among the police as an anti-terrorist organisation, but in Papua it is also used to thwart political dissent. Now, Australia is one of the countries that helps to finance Densus 88, and the Indonesian government looks on political dissent as terrorism and is using the anti-terrorist group against them. Now, I've got just a couple of examples here. I met a man who said to me that he gets a threatening SMS from someone, he doesn't know who it is, every day. Fancy getting that every day. Every day a threat to his life, to his property, to his family. He doesn't know who it is. Officials come and say to people that they are forbidden to have meetings. Groups cannot meet more than 20 people at a time. The last meeting I was at, which was the night before we came, it started about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and ended at 7 o'clock, and it was in a parish in Jaipur, I think. I forget exactly where. The priest who was at the meeting was summoned to the police station the next morning and asked and quizzed about what the meeting was about. And of course he fobbed it off, of course. But I mean, they know what's happening. I met this group of people in the forests who were saying, we live like rats. That's what they said. We live like rats. And it's the fear that's around them all the time. Now, this was an example. They said, on February the 5th this year, it was an anniversary of the coming of the Protestant missionaries, and it was a public holiday, and they, in their group, had planned to have big celebrations to celebrate this. They were going to, first of all, enjoy the holiday. Secondly, they were going to use it as a time to talk about their situation. And thirdly, they were going to give prizes for a recent sports competition. Now, it was pretty innocuous. The people had told the police, very, very good, how they were going to organise this activity. The police and military arrived in many cars, in uniforms and with guns. They had balaclavas on, the people said, just like Densus 88, Detachment 88. They brought cameras with them, took pictures and made videos. The community had thought there would be an arrest of the organisers, so all the people ran away into the forest with all their belongings. Now, there are incidents in the markets where the military and the police on motorcycles just unfortunately run into stalls or run over the produce, but they're never in uniform. And the people said, it is better to be killed than to be tortured. Now, the Australian government says it has raised the issue with the Indonesian government, and it says it believes that human rights have improved in West Papua. Well, if that's an improvement, friends, I would hate to hear about what wasn't. Now, this is another point about the land and the economy. We got off the plane and we were immediately in this meeting in Merauke, where they had maps of how the land has been divided up among all these foreign companies. Now, the procedure is that the local government invites companies to take large tracts of land, mainly for the planting of palm oil plantations, that type of thing. People are usually shocked when the companies come to sign an MOU with them, because oftentimes they're not prepared for this at all. And the company shows them the permit from the local government and the map saying which land they'll have. If the villagers don't agree to the proposal, the company says, OK then, well, thank you very much for your time, goes back to the local government and arrives in a couple of days with the police. As a result, the documents and the consequent MOU with the villagers are worthless. Another method of gaining the people's consent to hand over land is for the companies to pick leaders, fate them in big hotels and bribe them. And then, of course, there's huge internal social conflict when the leaders come back and say, well, look, I'm sorry, but we've given the land to such and such a company. Now, some Australian companies are involved in this, and one of them is CSR. We ought to do some serious business about looking to see what Australian companies are involved in this. The people said it is evil. Indonesia does not care for us. There's no attention for us. More than one family lives in one house. We live like rats. That's what they said. According to Greenpeace, 300,000 hectares of land disappear from Papua every year. There is a statement by the world's leaders that the Papuan forests function, along with the Amazon, as the world's lungs. So really, it's not just a Papuan problem. This is a problem for everybody. There was general feeling that education was poor, standards were low, and people can go to school and not learn anything at all. They said Indonesian education programs in Papua have failed. Although there are many school buildings, there's a lack of quality educational outcomes. For instance, there's only one Papuan professor and a few with master's degrees. The Indonesian curriculum is based on grades, and many Papuans do not get opportunities to study and therefore fail. The children of poor families stay in the lower level schools. And as I said, as they haven't got the money for school fees, many of them, those children miss out altogether. I was horrified to hear this. They said hospitals are places for the dying, not for healing. Hospitals are for the dying, not for healing. So alcohol is also another huge problem. Now, friends, I'm coming to the end of what I'm going to say. The word genocide was mentioned often. And the military certainly are killing people, and I would agree it is a slow motion genocide. And the general opinion encountered was that Indonesia is a total failure as regards Papua and is just another coloniser. And I'd just like to end off with something that the Papuan people in one group said. They said, we want people to listen to us. We are not Malay like the Indonesians. We have suffered for 64 years, and that is enough for us to suffer as a nation. Thank you.